A very good evening to everyone in attendance today. International Councillor for Circular Economy welcomes you to the 7th episode of the 3rd season of our Circular Chat, focused on the biggest challenge we as a global community face today, climate change. The Circular Chat is an initiative by ICCE to develop and promote the idea of a circular economy. The chats aim to engage key actors to mobilize system solutions at scale, and in that regard, we wish to bring to you the opinions and immense knowledge of leading experts in the field of climate change and the various facets it covers. My name is Anagha, and it is my honor to introduce our guest speaker for the day, Mr. Anil Gokarn, founder and director of ProEarth Ecosystems Private Limited, a company that provides waste management services, to talk to us about the work they have been doing to curb climate change. Mr. Anil has an MSc in Automated System Engineering from the University of Aachen, Germany, and worked in the auto industry for 10 years. He is a social entrepreneur who found his calling in establishing waste management services after a decade in the automobile industry. His vision is to play a significant role in transforming how cities will handle their waste while offering dignified livelihoods to the urban underprivileged. Currently, ProEarth has a team of 25 people who work with 100 housing complexes, managing 8 tons of organic waste daily. It is wonderful to have you with us today, Mr. Gokarn.
Thank you so much, Anaga. Thank you for that welcome.
Yes, sir. So to begin with, we understand that ProEarth Ecosystems is a social enterprise with a focus on providing decentralized solid waste management solutions. But for the audience that is present here today, can you please elaborate on the methods or products that you have come up with for the same?
Yes. So when we started ProEarth, our first customer base was basically housing complexes in an urban environment. We started off our activities in Pune, in Maharashtra, and here we were supported a little bit by the municipal regulations that were already in place, and which involved addressing the waste of bulk waste generators who generate a lot of waste in a given day. And so our services basically include, organizing trainings for any institution or housing. I mean, we are right now focused more on housing complexes. So residential facilities where we, educate people to first begin to understand what their waste is, how to sort it, how to organize it into the various categories that can be recycled and composted. And our key input there is to provide composting facilities on site in a decentralized manner at the point of generation of the waste itself. So what we do is we set up systems, infrastructure to compost, and that too within housing complexes where generally the psychology is that nobody wants their waste in the vicinity of where it's being generated. Generally, the approach is you want to have your waste as far as possible away from site. That is the general feeling, as across. I mean, this is generally across the world where people really want their waste away from out of sight as soon as possible. So our approach is to make sure that the wet waste that is generated that's biodegradable is processed on site within the facility of those waste generators, and then also help them to organize all their dry recyclables and other waste streams such as plastic, paper, cardboard, glass, other maybe metals, and then to channel them in a systematic manner for recycling. So this is generally how we are approaching. So from a product base, we also have partners. We partnered with an NGO called Inora, which we consider our mentors in this journey. And they have developed the biotechnology around composting. So we offer these biotechnology products as well, which is all the composting materials, the cultures, and the products that are needed to ensure that composting happens in a clean and sanitized way and does not disturb anybody in the vicinity of the project happening. So the idea is that the entire psychology around this issue is something that we have addressed, and we have large communities, even how communities with more than 800 to 900 households who are composting all their wet waste inside their compound for going across 4 to 5 years continuously. And so we have a sustainable system which is paid as a service and a combination of products that we offer for composting itself, going together, bundled into a service model that ensures that 60% of the waste generated by the community is managed within the compound. So you can imagine the kind of savings that generates in terms of the municipality having not to spend any resources to collect this material, which is the most difficult part of the waste stream, which is separated out at source, so that even the recyclable materials, the plastic, the paper, and various other valuables turn out cleaner and then can be organized in a better manner. A time can come where municipality would not even have to have a daily collection system organized around these facilities, where even recyclables then could be organized in a staged manner across the week. uh, and so a lot of resources can be saved, a lot of rationalization can take place in the equipment and manpower that a municipality needs to put into place. So overall, I think it's a benefit that goes across the board, right from waste generator to the people who are working in waste management. Their conditions become more healthy, and ultimately a lot of resources can be recovered. So this is the service model and the product model that we are operating on.
Yes, sir. And I think to conduct waste management in a decentralized manner, like you mentioned, in a clean and orderly manner, we have to make sure that the segregation also happens in a very efficient manner, right? Your organization, has provided your services in among 4 different categories of waste. So can you briefly maybe explain to our audiences how they can segregate and manage these same groups, at home at an individual level?
Yeah. So what we do is we've based our strategies on the overall system, the centralized system that is now developed by the government. So we've looked at the solid waste management 2016, which is the foundation rules which are in force now. And there, the recommended method to go is to have a 3-way segregation at a home level, which is to look at compostables, which is all your biodegradable materials, to be organized in one container. Then you have a second container which goes with all your clean and dry recyclable materials, which includes plastic, paper, glass, metals, Tetra Paks, metal foils, and any other potential materials that could be easily recycled, but maintained in a clean and sanitized way, not contaminated with either food waste or with bathroom waste, right? So that's your second category. Then your third category is basically your sanitary and household hazardous materials, because there are a lot of materials that we have now gotten used to in our daily lifestyle, which are hazardous. For example, there are insect sprays that we use, there are oils that we use, lubricants that we use, there are certain types of chemicals that we use, there are medicines which are expired that we dispose, there are electronic hazardous materials, and obviously there is the most difficult part of the waste stream, which is sanitary waste. So sanitary waste has to be maintained completely separate and cannot contaminate any other waste streams if we have to uh, sustainably recycle or manage them well, dispose them well. So the third category includes the household hazardous materials, which also materials that can injure waste workers, and that is also very important. So it could be broken glass, it could be syringes, it could be sharps, blades, cutting materials that ultimately can also be hazardous for waste workers in the waste chain. So these have to be maintained separately so that they are not handled, and the container in which all these materials are brought together need not be touched or handled. It can directly be disposed into either an incineration facility or a sanitized landfill facility. So this is the third category. And obviously the fourth category that we are uniquely working on is garden waste. Garden waste is brown leaves and branches that are generated in the community. And this is, you'll be surprised, in huge quantities in cities. So for example, in Pune, about 200 to 300 tons of garden waste gets generated in a day. And this material is the one that is generally, nobody pays for it. It's not something that municipality is ready to collect, and just gets mixed with other waste streams and causes a huge problem, and is also a waste stream that is easy to light up. So people put it on fire, and you've got the next level of pollution, which is air pollution that's happening. And particularly, I think a lot of experience, people who are living in Delhi have a lot of experience around this, about how air quality gets impacted by burning agricultural waste. And so our approach is to collect garden waste separately, and we've had a unique model around this, where we organize communities to keep their leaves and branches separately, and we channel these materials in a very cost effective manner for afforestation programs by connecting them to NGOs, who then use this as a raw material that goes into plantation activities and soil development activities. So incidentally, we are very happy to note that just recently the Ministry of Environment and Forests generated a report around the increase in forest cover. Particularly in Pune, there was a study done where there are a lot of NGOs that are doing plantation activities, and there's more than a 5 to 6 square kilometer increase in green cover that's happened over the last 5 to 10 years because of the activity of these NGOs. And we are proud to be partnering with such NGOs to whom we actually deliver these brown leaves and branches, and eventually that adds into soil development, soil fertility increase on the hill slopes of Pune. If you know a little bit of Pune, there are a lot of hills around Pune, and so the greening of these hills is an activity in which we are indirectly participating by managing garden waste. So this is how we are approaching it. And this is how individuals and homes could then begin to organize their waste, and ensure that most of it gets sustainably managed. The interesting part here is that the humongous problem around waste can be managed by these simple decisions that we take at home. And these simple decisions can account for something like 85 to 90% of materials going to the right channel and being reused as resources rather than going into a landfill or a dump site. So that's how impactful this activity is.
Yes, sir. I mean, it is wonderful to know about the green, the fact that the green cover has increased. It shows how important community spaces and individuals are in the whole economy to help out in increasing, just adding to sustainability and promoting our environment, making it better, and how we can make extremely large changes, no matter how small the group might be, or how, at an individual scale it might be. But taking a different turn, there have been a lot of cases that we have seen that, in the past, many developed nations, richer nations, dump their waste in less developed countries, right? And the developing nations already have enough and more waste to tackle on their own. But these policies have been changing, such as, the fact that the EU has barred its members from exporting their waste, etc. How do these policies impact Indian companies, both in terms of profitability as well as sustainability?
Okay, so I think, see, on the first front is that on any environmental issue, there are always intertwined social justice issues. Okay, you have to keep that in mind first. And when it comes to the developed countries exporting their waste to developing countries, with the impression that it is probably more cost effective to have them sorted out here in developing countries, I think now it's very clear that it doesn't work that way. And recycling and managing waste, particularly the more difficult waste streams like plastic waste, like there are several other materials in the chain that are far more difficult to handle, very expensive also to recycle, and to transfer those costs and liabilities onto developing countries obviously has led to the results that we see on the ground, where now we see a lot of environmental littering, we see a lot of that plastic and a lot of those recyclables ending up in our water bodies. So I think uh, obviously the results are there to a lot of reports, a lot of international reports are now available for us to study and understand these issues. But since your question is more about how it will impact businesses here, coming to that, if at all, I would see some kind of a temporary impact on businesses here in India, particularly if they were, dependent on these exported materials or imported materials for that matter. But given the size of our country, the kind of materials that we are consuming, and the kind of growth that we are going through, I don't see it as a long-term challenge for industry here to look at sustainable ways of managing these materials. Obviously, there are going to be challenges with specific materials. Plastic and so on are very challenging materials to handle. Even after all the efforts that we see internationally on a global level, today the kind of closed loop recycling in plastic that's happening does not go more than 14%. That's the statistic. In India, though, given that we have a very vibrant sort of informal community working in waste, we are seeing a lot of these materials properly channeled, particularly certain types of plastic, and that is going to grow. And in fact, the scope for creativity here and to develop, I think, potential innovations and to come up with good, sustainable, and also profitable methods of recycling and disposal are surely available in our country, and I don't see it as a challenge at all in the long term.
Well, that is very good to hear, sir. Because with the way that the environment has been going and the changing circumstances of our environment as well, we've been forced to become more adaptable to the things that get thrown at us, at different levels, at an individual level, at a community level, and such. But in particular to climate change practices, I feel they're more successful when they are molded to fit the environment of a particular nation and the temperament of its people. So in that regard, because you do partner with a lot of organizations, how important do you think it is to involve indigenous practices and people at the grassroots to achieve your goals and just long-term goals for the environment?
Well, so this is a very good question, and I would say it is the most important factor that will decide whether a organization succeeds or fails in this field. That's my opinion. It's that significant because India is such a vast country, and we have so many diverse ways of dealing with things. We have to go local. We have to understand the local issues. We have to design all our activities to meet grassroots level understanding of situations. Obviously, when it comes to waste, I think largely waste is an urban problem in India as well. But then every city is different. Every different geography needs a different approach. And so your question is very important in terms of the fact that being grassroots level, understanding local requirements is going to be literally the most important key step in your success. So when it comes to our practical implementation here in Pune, I can say it goes to such a granular level that even different parts of the city are different, and we have to think different ways of adapting to different parts of the same city. It's that important to have diversity and to innovate at every level, because the income groups are different at different levels of the city. For example, for a slum situation, you need a different sort of a solution. For a upper or a middle class community, you need a different solution. For restaurants, you need another. So different waste generators with different income groups and different. So you can imagine the diversity is huge in waste management. So it is very difficult to standardize, and you have to really meet the needs of the situation and really innovate and come with solutions. So this is how it's going to work. And so there is no one size fit all solution in solid waste management or in the circular economy for that matter. You have to look at each material at its own, for its own weightage. You have to see how different innovations can lead to different solutions. And so the scope for innovation, the scope for creativity is so huge that I think that's where I think the future is going to be. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with what you're saying, because we also, at ICC believe in the same thing about how you mentioned that, your organization tries to create resources with the waste that have been generated and to put that in a circular economy loop, so that, we could make sure that the waste that is generated doesn't get out of hand and that everything can be accumulated and used again and again. So, like, we at ICC aim to provide knowledge to our audience regarding the need to, create a circular economy. So, from your expertise, what role does solid waste management in particular play in transitioning to a loop-based approach?
Well, I would say solid waste management is one of the key, I would say the key steps which define whether it's the place where really you can play around to find the right loops. It's really the center where you begin to understand which loops are really working, which are failing, which are the types of products that are not sustainable, which are those that are creating the problems on the environmental front. This is really your playground to really understand where the circular economy is going to work. And circular economy is about finding those biological and technical loops that really make sure that all materials come back into circulation. Obviously, you need a lot of collaborations, you need a lot of innovation, you need to talk to a lot of people that you traditionally don't come into contact with. You have to, for example, this particularly fits in with a larger industry, because we're looking at larger industry has certain, I would say, fixed parameters in which they operate for their profitability. And so when you have to go circular, you have to start to engage with collaborations that are outside your general uh, frame of influence, and you have to start to innovate on finding resource loops and resource values. I think that's where the circular economy part comes in, and solid waste management is really the playground for that, because that's really where you're having problems, where the challenges come up, and where in the linear system you're just looking at material loops which are just coming to disposal and then going to landfill, right? But now you have to, so at that step where you make those decisions from consuming a product and then disposing it, so this is where you begin to make the bend in the loop towards circularity, right? So I think solid waste management is really the, I would say, the pivotal place where all these innovations can take place, and that's why I consider myself to be, I would say, lucky and fortunate to be in this space where there's a lot of innovation and there's a lot of scope for thinking along these lines and finding loops. So in our work itself, we are doing that because we are trying to engage with all kinds of people and organizations that we generally would not come into contact with. For example, when we're dealing with garden waste, we've now started to talk to forest department, and we are trying to partner with them in a way that garden waste could end up becoming a tool for afforestation. So all I'm trying to say that you have to look at networks and contacts which you would normally not come into touch with, and so that's where all the innovations happen, and that's where all the circular loops begin to fall into place. So
Yes,
this is
sir.
how
I
it's been
think,
done.
yeah, I think, the more we move forward with the youth coming up as well, with technologies developing, I think this particular area also has a lot of place to grow and, mold, like we mentioned, mold into communities to fit into the lives of people, to become more easy, so that waste management can become something easy for people to do at a regular basis. So, from your years of service and the vision that you have for the future in this regard itself, what, according to you, is the ideal waste scenario from the perspective of an individual or a household, a colony, maybe even a nation?
Okay, so to begin with, on an individual level, I think it's about being more conscious about your environment. It's about looking at what are the daily services and products that you are consuming, and looking at which of them are really sustainable. Because in many occasions, your individual choices, right, which are good for the environment, are also healthy for you personally. Okay, so it's about looking at healthy choices personally, and like focusing on those individual choices to reduce waste, to look at a simpler and more minimalistic approach to your lifestyle. I think that is the starting point at an individual level. Coming to a home level, I think it's at looking at the family space, where you're then looking to see how you can, um, once you've generated a certain amount of waste within the family, how is it that you're going to organize it? uh, Obviously minimization comes as the first step. Strategies of reduce, reuse, these refuse, these have to play a significant role, much more than just words that we are generally using in, it has to really translate into our decisions, into our behavior. And then uh, at a community level, then it comes down to ensuring how the entire community then expands to looking at organizing their wet waste. Let's say 60% of your waste gets treated there. Looking at minimizing your recyclable materials, looking at keeping them clean and sanitized so that they go to recycling, and then looking at those unsustainable materials, and can we just avoid creating that waste in the first place. I think those are the approaches that need. So sanitary waste, for example, has a lot of interesting solutions, which require a behavior shift that will eliminate that waste completely. I mean, they are available, and that's something that we have to progress towards as a community. And then obviously when we do this as a community, then it moves to, let's say, a municipality, a ward, a municipal level. It expands to the city, and then you have a country that's finally clean and sustainable. And I think that movement has already started over since the Swachh Bharat mission. That movement has started, and it's for us to really participate very strongly, and ensure that that movement turns into a huge mass behavior change. And I think personally, I'm pretty optimistic that we are going to get there. It's going to take us maybe a couple of more years or 5 more years or whatever, but I think we are in a good space to really reach there, and I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to get there. So that's how it is.
Yes, sir. I mean, I think your optimism and the fact that because you are working in this field, the fact that you are so optimistic about this, gives everybody a sense of hope and optimism themselves that, there will be better change. There'll be things to look forward to. And that if we work together as a community and, as a nation, as just a global community, we can make changes happen. So that's a very good note that, we have taken from this. I would like to just look at if there's any questions in the chat box, but I will mention that I'm sure our audiences have taken out some valuable input from this, conversation. They've learned a lot about waste management and how they can do it at home. I see there are no questions in the live chat box, so I think that is all the questions that we have for today. So thank you, Mr. Gokarn, for being here with us today. I'm sure everybody had a wonderful time listening to you and gathering all of the information that you have given us. The chat has ended on a very optimistic and positive note. So that is one wonderful thing to look forward to. I would also thank everybody who has decided to join our live session today. We will be back at the same time next week. And if you don't want to miss out on any updates or future conversations, do follow our social media pages and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once again, thank you so much, and see you next week at the Circular Chat.
Thank you so much, Anana.